Commander Diana Blackwood stood at the observation deck of the International Space Station, her eyes fixed on the strange vessel approaching Earth's orbit. The sleek, crystalline ship belonged to Zephyrix, an envoy from the Galactic Concordat who had requested an urgent meeting with Earth's leadership. After 15 years of peaceful contact with various alien civilizations, humanity had grown accustomed to extraterrestrial visitors, but something about this meeting felt different. "Commander, the Concordat ship is requesting immediate docking clearance," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from his station. "They're marking it as diplomatic priority 1. Diana nodded, her reflection grim in the reinforced glass. "Grant them clearance. Alert the Security Council representatives on board." As the alien ship gracefully maneuvered into position, Diana couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had been growing since she'd received the initial transmission. The Concordat, usually measured and diplomatic in their approach, had never shown such urgency before. The docking procedure went smoothly, and within minutes, Zephyrix emerged from the airlock. The tall, ethereal being's iridescent skin shifted colors with each movement, a trait of their species that never failed to captivate human observers. But today, the normally calming blues and greens were shot through with anxious streaks of yellow. Commander Blackwood, Zephyrix's translator, conveyed their melodic voice. "Thank you for accommodating this rushed meeting. I bring grave news that cannot wait for the usual diplomatic channels." Diana led them to the station's secure conference room, where holographic displays showed various members of Earth's Security Council joining remotely. "We're listening, Ambassador Zephyrix. The Nexar Empire has set its sights on your world," Zephyrix announced without preamble. The statement hung in the air like a physical weight. "Our intelligence networks have confirmed they are mobilizing their war fleets." The room erupted in murmurs and exclamations. The Nexar were known to humanity only through cautionary tales from their alien allies, a militant species that had conquered dozens of worlds through overwhelming force and superior technology. "With all due respect," General Thompson's hologram interjected, "Earth is hardly defenseless. Our military capabilities are insignificant compared to Nexar technology," Zephyrix cut in, their skin now pulsing with urgent reds. "You don't understand. They have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours. The Concordat has tried reasoning with them, but their Supreme Commander Varric believes your species represents a future threat that must be eliminated now." Diana leaned forward. "A future threat? We've barely established colonies on Mars. How could we possibly threaten them?" Zephyrix's expression shifted in a way that approximated a sad smile. "It is not your current capabilities that concern them, Commander. It is your potential. Your species adapts and evolves at a rate that frightens them. They have observed how quickly you advance, how creatively you solve problems. In the century since you first achieved powered flight, you've reached your moon, sent probes beyond your solar system, and made first contact. They fear what you might become in another century." The implications weren't lost on anyone in the room. Humanity was facing extinction not for what they had done, but for what they might do. "How long do we have?" Diana asked, her military training kicking in as she pushed aside the enormity of the threat to focus on practical matters. 3 of your months, at most," Zephyrix replied. "The Concordat cannot officially intervene, it would trigger an interstellar war that would devastate dozens of worlds. But I am here to provide what information I can about their capabilities and weaknesses." Diana spent the next hours absorbing details about Nexar battle tactics, their technological capabilities, and their few known vulnerabilities. The more she learned, the more impossible their situation seemed. The Nexar's smallest ships could obliterate Earth's largest military installations. Their armor could withstand nuclear strikes. Their weapons could reshape continents. But as the briefing continued, Diana noticed something interesting. For all their technological superiority, the Nexar were rigid, inflexible. They had fought the same way for centuries because it had always worked. They had never needed to adapt, to think creatively, to improvise. "Thank you, Zephyrix, Diana said as the meeting concluded. You've risked much to warn us. The alien diplomat's skin had settled into a deep purple. I fear it will not be enough. The Concordat remembers how your people helped us during the crisis of the seventh star, even though you had just joined the galactic community. We owed you this warning, at least. Though I suspect it will only delay the inevitable. As Diana escorted Zephyrix back to their ship, she was already formulating plans. The Nexar expected humanity to either surrender or fight conventionally and lose. They weren't prepared for a third option. Ambassador, she called out just before Zephyrix entered their ship. You said they fear our potential. Perhaps it's time we showed them why. As the alien vessel departed, Diana began composing messages to every scientific institution, military think tank, and research facility on Earth. They had 3 months to do what humanity did best: innovate, adapt, and overcome impossible odds. The Nexar thought they were being prudent by attacking humanity before it could become a threat. They were about to discover they were too late. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Stone stood in the underground command center beneath Geneva, watching as another red dot appeared on the holographic display. Another Nexar scout ship, passing through the Kuiper Belt. They were mapping approach vectors, probing Earth's early warning systems. In the 82 days since Zephyrix's warning, humanity had been preparing for the inevitable. Status report on Project Firewall? Stone asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. Dr. Reeves, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, gestured to a complex diagram floating above her station. The quantum entanglement grid is at 70% coverage. If the Nexar use their standard FTL approach patterns, we'll have advance warning of their arrival. It wasn't much, but it was something. The past 3 months had seen the greatest unified scientific effort in human history. Traditional defense systems would be useless against Nexar technology, so they had been forced to think differently, to innovate in ways that even their alien allies hadn't considered. Message from Commander Blackwood, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced, his hands flying over his holographic interface. The Nexar advance fleet has been detected near Saturn. Multiple capital ships confirmed. Stone's jaw tightened. Earlier than expected. They're not following their usual patterns. They're adapting, Dr. Reeves observed, surprise evident in her voice. Zephyrix said they never change their tactics. They fear us enough to evolve, Stone replied grimly. Initiate Phase 1. Alert all command centers worldwide. Across the globe, hidden facilities hummed to life. Traditional military bases had been largely abandoned, they would be the Nexar's first targets. Instead, humanity had gone underground, mobile, and decentralized. No central command to target, no easy victories. The first wave of Nexar ships emerged from faster-than-light travel just beyond lunar orbit. Their massive vessels, black as deep space and sharp as obsidian knives, filled the sky. Supreme Commander Varric stood on his flagship's bridge, watching Earth grow larger on his display. No sign of their defensive fleet, his second-in-command reported. Orbital defenses are primitive. They appear to be transmitting a communication. Ignore it, Varric commanded, his scaled skin reflecting the harsh bridge lighting. Begin the standard bombardment pattern. Let's end this quickly. The Nexar ships moved into attack formation, their weapon systems charging. But as they approached optimal firing range, something unexpected happened. Their targeting systems began to fail. In her orbital command post, Commander Blackwood watched as the first phase of humanity's defense plan took effect. Status of the quantum interference field. Operating at full capacity, the technician reported. Their targeting systems are completely scrambled. They can't get a weapons lock. It had been Dr. Reeves' breakthrough, using quantum entanglement to create a field of probabilistic uncertainty around Earth. The Nexar's precise targeting computers couldn't compensate for targets that existed in multiple probable locations simultaneously. Varric's rage was palpable as reports of the malfunction reached him. Impossible. Switch to manual targeting. We don't need precision to destroy their cities. But as the Nexar ships adjusted their strategy, humanity unveiled its second surprise. From hidden silos across the planet, thousands of small, automated drones launched into space. They weren't weapons, they were decoys, each one broadcasting false signatures that exactly matched human population centers. Multiple targets detected, the Nexar weapons officer reported, confusion evident in their voice. Unable to distinguish between real and false readings. Stone watched from the Geneva bunker as the Nexar fleet hesitated for the first time in their long history of conquest. They couldn't target precisely due to the quantum interference, and they couldn't target indiscriminately because they couldn't identify real targets. They're launching fighters, Rodriguez reported. Switching to direct visual targeting. Exactly as predicted, Stone smiled grimly. Initiate Phase 2. Around the world, what appeared to be civilian communications satellites revealed themselves to be sophisticated electronic warfare platforms. As the Nexar fighters approached Earth's atmosphere, they were hit with targeted electromagnetic pulses, precisely calibrated to the frequencies Zephrix had provided. Dozens of fighters began falling from the sky, their advanced systems overloaded by the primitive but effective human countermeasures. The Nexar had never bothered defending against such basic attacks. Why would they, when no species had dared use such outdated methods against them in centuries? But humanity's advantage wouldn't last long. Already, Varric was ordering modifications to his fighters' shielding. The quantum interference field was requiring massive power to maintain. And the Nexar still had overwhelming force on their side. They're adapting faster than we anticipated, Dr. Reeves noted, concern evident in her voice. The interference field won't hold them back forever. It doesn't need to, Stone replied, watching as the next wave of Nexar fighters approached. We just need to hold them off long enough for Phase 3. In her orbital post, Commander Blackwood received the signal she'd been waiting for. Ground teams are in position. Project Phoenix is ready. She took a deep breath, watching as the massive Nexar ships loomed over her world. They had brought enough firepower to reduce Earth to ash. But they had made one crucial mistake: they had given humanity time to prepare, to innovate, to show exactly why they were right to fear human potential. Begin Phase 3, she ordered. Let's show them why they should have struck earlier. The Nexar were so focused on the battle above Earth that they never saw the real threat coming from below. Phase 3 began not with a bang, but with silence, a complete communications blackout across their entire fleet. Supreme Commander Varric's bridge erupted in chaos as ship after ship went dark. What's happening? He demanded, watching helplessly as his tactical display flickered and died. The answer lay deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, where Dr. Reeves monitored the activation of Project Phoenix. Thousands of quantum-linked nanobots, released into the upper atmosphere weeks ago, had finally reached their target. The microscopic machines were now infiltrating the Nexar ships through their own sensor arrays, spreading through their systems like a digital virus. Neural network integration at 60%, Dr. Reeves reported to Stone. Their ship's AI cores are being overwhelmed. It had been humanity's masterstroke, using the Nexar's own technological superiority against them. Their ships were too advanced, too automated, too dependent on their artificial intelligence. They never expected an attack at the microscopic level. In orbit, Commander Blackwood watched as the massive Nexar vessels began drifting out of formation. Status of the ground teams. In position, Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice crackled through the quantum-encrypted channel. Boarding parties ready for deployment. This was the riskiest part of the plan. While the nanobots disrupted the Nexar ship systems, specially trained teams would board the vessels. Not to fight, that would be suicide, but to gather intelligence and plant the seeds of doubt. On his flagship, Varric was facing something he'd never experienced in centuries of warfare: uncertainty. His ships were paralyzed, their automated systems compromised. The quantum interference was still preventing accurate targeting, and now strange messages were appearing on every functioning screen in his fleet. The messages were simple, written in the Nexar's own language: "You were right to fear us. But you were wrong about why." Stone watched the feeds from the boarding team's cameras as they moved through the disabled Nexar ships. The alien crews were in disarray, their rigid military structure crumbling in the face of an attack they couldn't understand or counter. Team 7 has reached the engineering section, Rodriguez reported. Beginning data extraction. Dr. Reeves' eyes widened as she processed the incoming information. "Colonel, these ships, they're not just weapons platforms. They're arcs." "Explain," Stone demanded, though he was beginning to understand the implications. "The Nexar, they're not just an empire. They're refugees. Their home system was dying. They survived by conquering others, taking their resources, their technologies. They're not expanding out of choice, they're running from something." In her orbital post, Commander Blackwood received the same information. The Nexar's aggression wasn't just about military superiority, it was about survival. They attacked other civilizations because they believed it was the only way to ensure their species' continuation. "Send this to every ship in their fleet," she ordered. "Along with our response." Across the Nexar fleet, new messages began appearing: "We understand now. We can help. Our strength isn't in our weapons, it's in our ability to find solutions where others see only conflict." The boarding teams reported an unexpected development. The Nexar crews weren't attempting to repel them. Instead, lower-ranking officers were beginning to question their orders. The rigid hierarchy that had defined their society for centuries was showing its first cracks. Varric watched his empire's greatest fleet hanging powerless above the planet they had come to destroy. The humans hadn't just defeated his weapons, they had done something far more dangerous. They had introduced doubt into a society built on absolute certainty. "Sir," his second-in-command reported, "we're receiving transmissions from multiple ships. The crew, they want to talk to the humans." In the Geneva bunker, Stone allowed himself a small smile. "Begin Phase 4, he ordered. "Tell Commander Blackwood to prepare for negotiations." Dr. Reeves looked up from her station. "Do you think they'll actually listen?" "They don't have a choice," Stone replied. "We've shown them that their current path leads to extinction, either by our hands or by whatever they're running from. Now we offer them an alternative." The quantum interference field powered down, and the nanobots retreated from the Nexar ship systems. It was a calculated risk, but one based on a fundamental understanding of human nature, and the hope that even aliens could recognize the value of cooperation over conflict. As Earth's sun rose over the horizon, casting long shadows through the disabled Nexar fleet, humanity prepared to demonstrate another aspect of their potential: the ability to turn enemies into allies. The real test wasn't whether they could defeat the Nexar, but whether they could help them find a better way forward. Commander Blackwood's voice echoed through all channels: "Human and Nexar alike, you came here believing you needed to destroy us to survive. We're offering you a chance to discover why that was your greatest mistake." The massive conference room aboard the International Space Station had never been intended to host this kind of meeting. Commander Blackwood sat at one end of the hastily assembled table, facing Supreme Commander Varric across its length. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Your tactics were unprecedented," Varric admitted, his scaled features impossible to read. "In all our centuries of conquest, no species has ever turned our own technology against us so effectively. That's because you've always faced civilizations that tried to match your strength," Blackwood replied. "We knew we couldn't compete with your technology, so we found another way." Dr. Reeves stood at a holographic display, showing the data they'd gathered about the Nexar's true situation. Their home star had begun to destabilize centuries ago, forcing them to become nomadic conquerors. Each conquest bought them time, resources, and technology, but their fundamental problem remained unsolved. Your current path is unsustainable, Dr. Reeves explained. Even if you conquered every civilization in this sector of the galaxy, you'd eventually run out of worlds to take. You need a permanent solution. Lieutenant Colonel Stone, watching from his position near the door, noticed the subtle shift in the Nexar officers' postures. They knew she was right, but centuries of martial conditioning made it difficult for them to accept help from a species they'd come to destroy. And you believe you can provide this solution? Varric's second-in-command asked, skepticism evident in their tone. Your civilization is centuries behind ours. Technologically, yes, Stone interjected. But while you've spent centuries perfecting the art of conquest, we've been solving problems. Adapting. Innovating. Your society values strength and stability. Ours thrives on change and challenges. Dr. Reeves brought up new holographic displays, showing preliminary designs that merged human theoretical physics with Nexar technology. Your ship's quantum drives could be modified to create stable artificial solar systems. Instead of conquering worlds, you could build them. The Nexar officers studied the displays with growing interest. Their rigid military hierarchy had kept them focused on proven strategies, preventing them from seeing alternatives that lay outside their traditional thinking. But not everyone was ready to embrace change. In orbit above Earth, several Nexar ships suddenly broke formation, their systems coming back online as they fought off the lingering effects of the nanobot infection. Rebel faction, Varric growled, receiving the alert. Hardliners who would rather die than accept help from an inferior species. Commander Blackwood was already moving. Stone, initiate Defense Protocol Beta. Dr. Reeves, can you reactivate the quantum interference field? Not in time, the scientist replied, fingers flying over her controls. They've adapted their systems against it. The rebel ships opened fire, their energy weapons cutting through space toward Earth. But humanity had one more surprise prepared. Hidden satellites activated, generating overlapping gravitational fields that bent the energy beams back on themselves. Impossible, one of the Nexar officers breathed. You've weaponized gravity itself? No, Dr. Reeves corrected. We've learned to work with it. There's a difference. It's the same principle that could help stabilize your artificial solar systems. The rebel ships, their own weapons rendered useless, found themselves trapped in a complex web of gravitational fields. They could neither advance nor retreat. Varric stood, his massive frame casting a shadow across the conference table. You could have destroyed them. Why didn't you? Because this isn't about destruction, Commander Blackwood answered. It's about finding a better way forward. For all of us. The Supreme Commander was silent for a long moment, considering. His species had survived for centuries through strength and conquest. But facing him was proof that there were other forms of strength, the strength to adapt, to think differently, to turn enemies into allies. The rebels will be dealt with, he finally declared. And then we would hear more about these artificial solar systems. Dr. Reeves smiled, already pulling up more detailed schematics. We'll need to establish joint research teams. Your quantum technology combined with our theoretical work, we might be able to save not just your people, but transform how all species think about habitat creation. As the meeting continued, Stone moved to stand beside Commander Blackwood. Think it will work? He asked quietly. It has to, she replied. Because if we can turn the Nexar from conquerors into collaborators, it changes everything. Not just for them, but for every species in the galaxy. The sun rose over Earth's horizon, illuminating the assembled fleet of former enemies. In the conference room, humans and Nexar began the complicated process of turning theory into reality, proving that sometimes the greatest victories come not from destroying your enemies, but from helping them become something better. 1 year after the failed invasion, the Jupiter shipyards hummed with activity. Commander Blackwood watched through the observation deck as human and Nexar engineers worked together on the prototype of their joint venture, humanity's first quantum-powered stellar forge. The initial tests exceeded our expectations, Dr. Reeves reported, her hologram floating beside Blackwood. The artificial star matrix is stable at 10% power. Varric's engineers say they've never seen anything like it. The massive structure taking shape before them represented more than just a technological breakthrough. It was proof that cooperation could achieve what centuries of conquest could not. Lieutenant Colonel Stone entered the observation deck, his uniform now bearing both Earth Defense Force and Joint Species Commission insignias. The last of the rebel holdouts surrendered this morning. Seems watching us successfully create an artificial star convinced them that change was inevitable. The rebels' surrender marked the end of an era for the Nexar. Their society, built on military hierarchy and conquest, was transforming. Some had resisted, unable to accept the new direction. But as the benefits of collaboration became clear, even the most hardened warriors began to see the wisdom in adaptation. Speaking of change, Stone continued, the Galactic Concordat's representatives have arrived. They're requesting a full demonstration. Blackwood smiled. The same alien species that had once warned them about the Nexar threat were now coming to learn from Earth. Humanity's response to the invasion had changed how they were viewed throughout the galaxy. In the primary control center, Varric stood with his officers, watching as the stellar forge powered up. The massive device, combining Nexar quantum technology with human theoretical physics, began to glow with artificial sunlight. My ancestors would not understand this, he rumbled, his scaled skin reflecting the growing light. They believed strength came from domination. They were wrong. Dr. Reeves, now physically present, monitored the power readings. Fusion matrix stable at 15%. Gravitational containment holding. We're ready for full power demonstration. The assembled representatives from various species watched in awe as the stellar forge reached full capacity. At its heart, a new star was born, not through natural processes that took millions of years, but through the combined ingenuity of former enemies. With this technology, Blackwood addressed the gathered audience, we can create sustainable habitats for any species. No more need for conquest. No more refugees searching for new homes. Zephrix, the diplomat who had first warned Earth about the Nexar threat, stepped forward. Their skin shifted through patterns of blue and gold, amazement and joy in their species' color language. When I brought warning of the Nexar invasion, I feared I was witnessing the end of humanity, they admitted. Instead, I was witnessing your beginning. You have changed everything. The stellar forge's light bathed the observation deck in a warm glow as Blackwood replied, we had help. Sometimes the greatest innovations come not from working alone, but from bringing different perspectives together. Stone watched as Nexar warriors, once the most feared conquerors in known space, discussed technical specifications with humans and other alien species. Their military precision, once used for warfare, was now directed toward building rather than destroying. They feared our potential, he mused. Turns out they were right to be afraid, just not for the reasons they thought. Dr. Reeves nodded, making final adjustments to the forge's controls. They expected us to become conquerors like them. Instead, we showed them a different kind of strength. As the artificial star stabilized, casting its light across the shipyard, Commander Blackwood reflected on how far they'd come. Earth had faced extinction and emerged not just survived, but transformed. They had turned their greatest threat into their strongest allies, and in doing so, changed the course of galactic history. Begin recording, she commanded, preparing to document this moment for future generations. 1 year ago, we faced a choice between destruction and evolution. We chose to evolve, and in doing so, helped others evolve with us. This stellar forge represents more than just technological achievement, it represents the power of innovation, adaptation, and cooperation. The light of the artificial star reached across space, touching the ships and stations where humans and Nexar worked side by side. It illuminated not just the scene before them, but the path forward, a future where strength came not from domination, but from the courage to change and grow together. The Nexar came to prevent us from reaching our potential, Blackwood concluded, watching as the star they had created continued to shine. Instead, they helped us exceed it. And in doing so, they found their own path to a better future. As the demonstration concluded and the various species began discussing treaties and technology sharing agreements, Stone joined Blackwood at the window. Think they've learned their lesson about underestimating humanity? Blackwood watched as a group of young Nexar engineers excitedly shared ideas with their human counterparts, their former military rigidity replaced by genuine enthusiasm for creation rather than conquest. I think we all learned something, she replied. About who we are, what we can become, and how much further we can go when we work together. The artificial star continued to shine, a testament to what was possible when fear was transformed into hope, when enemies became allies, and when the drive to survive became the inspiration to thrive. It was more than just a new dawn for humanity, it was a new dawn for all species who dared to imagine a better way forward.